Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of City Skylines, the British Challenge with me, Pug Gaming. Now it's been a little while since my last video, I think it's over a week now, but you'll be able to see during this video why it's taken so long to upload. I've pretty much just been trying to get the outline and basics of this city sorted, which has taken a lot longer than I expected. So as discussed, this is going to be the first major city in this build, and I'm going to be basing it upon a city in the UK called Milton Keynes. Now the reason why I called Milton Keynes is because I didn't want to go down the London route for this build. I wanted something a little bit more in between the two of what I've already designed and a sort of city. So Milton Keynes is a fairly new area in terms of building. It was still built in the 1960s, I think. But it was designed to become a city in its scale. It's incorporated a few of its town surroundings, which I think is Bleachley and Stratford, I think it is as well, along with lots of villages on the outskirts and farmland. So that in itself does tie in quite well with what I've already done. So it's going to be a city with the surroundings of what I've already been creating from that as well. So I think that works out quite well. Another good thing about Milton Keynes is I've been waiting quite a while now to be able to add in a decent football stadium, and Milton Keynes have got a fairly new established building, and I'm going to be trying to replicate that within this build as well. But for the starters, I'm going to pretty much take what I can from the main core of central MK. This is the area with most of the sort of shopping districts, so a lot of commercial as well. With some housing estates around it as well, so I'm going to try and replicate it. I'm not copying it sort of brick by brick, but I'm going to use what I can sort of see and try and develop that into my own build. So the first job was to get the train station in. Obviously this is going to be quite a major train station in terms of the scale of what I've already built. So I decided to go for the component train station here from the workshop, and it looks really good. Got a little bus route around it as well. And pretty much just going to build from this, and we'll jump into a time lapse now just to let you see how this is developing, and we'll chat in a moment. So the first commercial zone here in this corner, I'm going to create I think it's a Morrison's. I've actually copied this pretty much to the same spec as the actual one in MK. Again, I've run out a bit of space here with this lake on the side, but I'm trying to adapt it to the best I can here. So I think what's going to be difficult here is the lack of some of the assets from the workshop to really get what I want to get down here. There's not a lot of British style buildings that you see in MK. I'm going to have to try and adapt some of the ones from the Rico stash, and to see how that goes really. But I'm sure we'll get something going. I think my major difficulty is actually creating the Centre MK shopping centre, because that's all underground, and so not underground, undercover, and I haven't got the ability to do that unless I whack in some dirty big warehouses, but I'm not sure that's going to quite give it off in the sort of look that I want to go for. So I'm going to have to think of something a little bit different here. I might have to just go for a town centre through where it would be in real life. Like I say, I'm not copying it brick by brick, it's just using it as an example and sort of something to build upon, really. I'm sure another reason as you're watching this video now why I chose MK is the number of roundabouts that they have. So many that I can't actually fit in all of them in the way that I wanted to. A lot of the MK is built up of what I would call the large roundabouts, and then medium, and the small ones are the ones around the housing estates, but it's quite difficult to really combine that scale between them all. So there's not as many roundabouts in this pre-build as there are in real life in MK, but as I say, just to give you an idea on what I'm going for here, it still works in my opinion. So to give you an idea, this whole video here I think was about 5 to 6 hours worth, and that is just literally the layout of this new city area. God knows how long it's going to take for us to detail this, but I'm sure it'll look brilliant when we finished. I did decide to change the roundabout here as the other one didn't seem to flow as nicely, and I thought that was a nice variation to have. Not quite MK-ish, but it's a roundabout still in some terms. So next was to sort of build out the zones for commercial. I wanted to try and copy these road layouts as best I could, and that's kind of where this approach comes from here. It's kind of the main road which then goes into a medium-sized road, and then to the smaller roads is where you find the actual buildings, etc. So obviously done for traffic purposes, and it'll be interesting to see how that works actually with the AI of the city skylines actually. So this here is now moving on to the first of the sort of main core housing estates here in central MK. Like I say, there's a hell of a lot of smaller villages and little towns around the main core of MK, so I'm going to try and replicate that as best I can. But there is some housing estates very close to the main centre, and this is the sort of approach I was going for here, and I tried to copy the road layouts of how they do so in MK, certainly in this area, as best I could. Again, it's always difficult, especially when I'm using these miniature roads. They do kind of issue some problems when it comes to actual zoning, especially when you get quite close to one another. So I've done this as best as I could, and it worked out well. So here I've started to find a few buildings in the Rico list I wanted to add down. So certainly around the train station there's a couple of hotels that I found on the workshop, so I've added those in. Another thing as well, one thing you'll find around MK, they have a lot of different sort of retail parks, as I'd like to call it. From where I live, a retail park normally consists of one zone where you have all of the retail buildings within that. But in MK it's a bit more spread out, so I'm going to go with that sort of approach here. Have a few little retail-y blocks sort of scattered around, just to sort of generate that sort of feeling. Next, what I want to do is kind of get the services down and schools, etc. Before I actually continue building the whole thing, I need to obviously get the land value up as well in some zones, especially if I'm going to be putting down some buildings that need that to keep them active. It's probably going to be needed to bring the shops through as well. So you'll see here I've been placing down all the sort of assets I have of certain types. I listed the hospitals here. And in the end I actually decided to combine two hospitals together, just to sort of create a bigger sort of look and a different style approach. I know the car parking spaces you may have saw there was a little bit scatty in terms of coming over one another, but in terms of the actual design I like it a lot better than just having a single one. It looks a lot more European, and that works out quite nicely. So yeah, this last sector here is just me building up the services and putting some schools down, fire station and the police stations as well. I did do a bit of work on the roundabouts as well, using the mod tools just to sort of get the sort of traffic moving a little bit better. And in this corner as well I did start putting down some extra hotels. I also found, like I say, the assets as well, which I just chucked in the corner. So if you see this and think, why are all these buildings scattered all over the place in the corners, not very well thought out, they're there so I don't forget them, basically. So when our next episode we'll concentrate on a particular zone and we'll be using those to bring in and not forget them really. So I just picked out the best ones I found. I have found a few more on the workshop since then, so I'll be adding those to the side channels as well. Unfortunately, one thing I did notice, which was quite disappointing, is the roads I wanted to use, which are still in these clips here. It changes a little bit later on towards the end, but these double avenues, they are very, very Milton Keynes like in certain areas, certainly around where the shopping centre, Centre MK is. But leading those roads into small roundabouts causes an absolute disaster in terms of traffic, and they just don't flow. I'm not sure if it's something I'm doing, but connecting those up to these miniature roundabouts just causes a lot of disturbance, and I decided to change that to the standard 2x2 roads, as you'll see a bit later on, and they flow perfectly. So it's certainly something to do with those avenues, and I imagine it's because it's going into such a small area. It did cause some issues, so we've changed those. A bit disappointing, as I did want to use the double avenues certainly around the main core of central MK, but like we say, I'd rather have things flowing correctly, not loads of traffic backups, which is what was happening. So we'll keep them as I change them towards the end, but it is a shame. So anyone who lives in MK and obviously knows their area a lot better than what I do, I'm only a local visitor in terms of visiting MK. But apologies if anything doesn't quite suit what you're used to seeing. Like I say, it's only a basis of what I'm designing this upon. It's not something I'm copying bit by bit. So let me know your thoughts and any changes you think I should make to make it a bit more MK based. Always happy to hear. So unfortunately not the most exciting of videos for you, but again it's the layout that needs to be done before we can jump into the exciting detailing, etc. So as you can see, this final stages, the houses are being built up. Not much else is really going on at the moment. There's literally no detailing at all, and you'll know how that will be making me feel right now. But I'm thinking in these next few episodes of getting this city built up, we're going to concentrate on a zone. I have the habit of jumping all over the place, so we'll do it like that this time. And I think we'll do it a bit more logical as well. We'll start in the top corner and move ourselves around. just to get things going. At least we can detail that zone as well, rather than doing bit by bit and then having to go back and zone all of it. So not sure what we'll start with, but keep tuned. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. All the best.